The taxpayer-backed Baltimore Children and Youth Fund nonprofit pays its president a salary of $219,000 a year, a notable increase from recent years that some experts say raises questions about best practices for nonprofits.
America, Pandora's box just got ripped wide open. While everybody's focusing on Minnesota's fraud, Baltimore is running the exact same grift. We're talking about $18 million in taxpayer funds flowing through nonprofits and city offices where executives are pulling down six-figure salaries while nobody can explain where a single dollar is going. The president of one nonprofit makes $219,000 a year, while the city can't produce a line-by-line breakdown of how $2 million is being spent. This is the blueprint for Democrat grift economy, and Baltimore's Mayor Brandon Scott is running a masterclass. What is up, guys? Tyson DELACRUZ here. Thank you so much for rocking with me. What we're seeing exposed in Minnesota just opened Pandora's box, and Baltimore is about to be the next domino to fall. Let me break down the Baltimore Children and Youth Fund scam. This taxpayer-backed nonprofit received $16 million in guaranteed annual funding from Baltimore City. That, my friends, is not fundraising. That is a guaranteed check from taxpayers every single year, and the president, Alysia Lee, makes $219,000 a year.
BCYF receives $16 million taxpayer dollars from Baltimore City this year that is guaranteed annually to support programs for kids. Spotlight on Maryland obtained documentation of BCYF's salaries as of October in a public information request that shows of its 23 employees, only 3 make less than the median household income in Baltimore City of roughly $60,000. The average salary at the organization is about $90,000. 6 employees, which is about 1 in 4 members of the staff, make at least $100,000.
Now get this, according to their documentation, Lee's salary increased from 18 to 27% since 2023. A BCYF spokesperson claimed it was only an 18% increase since 2022 when she made $185,000. But here's where it gets interesting. Their tax form from fiscal year 2023 shows Lee made $172,000 a year. Which one is it? Because that, my friends, is a 27% raise in 2 years. Professor Erica Harris from Florida International University, who specializes in nonprofit accounting, said it perfectly.
Absent that kind of growth, a pretty substantial growth in the organization, no, I would say that a 27% increase in someone's salary in such a short period of time does not appear to be best practices.
But it gets worse. Of the BCYF's 23 employees, only 3 make less than Baltimore's median household income of $60,000. The average salary at this organization is $90,000. 6 employees, that's 1 in 4 staff members, make at least $100,000 a year. Total salaries, $2.67 million, which accounts for 16% of their entire Baltimore City taxpayer budget. And here's the most damning part. When asked about their compensation process on their tax form, BCYF checked no under the section asking if they include review or approval by independent persons and or comparable data.
With following best practices, we expect to see yes checked to that box every time. When it's not, the public should be wary of, is this person being paid appropriately or not?
Now let's talk about the Mayor's Office of Arts, Culture, and Entertainment, known as MOAS. The office has a $2 million budget and is responsible for putting Baltimore's largest events together, including AFRAM, Artscape, and Charm City Live. Sounds great, doesn't it? There's just one problem. 6 months into the fiscal year, the city cannot explain how the money's being spent. Spotlight on Maryland requested a line-by-line breakdown of expenses. The response? No response documents exist. Think about that. A city office with a $2 million budget has no documentation of how they're spending taxpayer money.
I'll say this.
Councilman Mark Conway finds it unacceptable.
No, I think it's not acceptable.
Councilman Mark Conway, and he was the only one out of 14 council members to respond, said this is an office spending public dollars dollars, and you would expect that they have accurate accounting of those dollars. Neither MOAS, Mayor Brandon Scott's team, the city budget director, nor city department could provide itemized accounting. MOAS's $2 million is included in the budget in one line item. Think about that. When Spotlight on Maryland asked MAOS directly if it tracks spending, the office refused to answer and referred questions to the city law department, which then didn't respond.
Luke Spreen says he found it a bit surprising that the city could not come up with an answer. Spreen is an associate professor at the University of Maryland, teaching economics and public finance.
So in the middle of the fiscal year, I would think that you would be able to produce a report that says today we've spent this amount associated with this fund within our budget.
But Baltimore's nonprofit GRIFT is just the tip of the iceberg. Maryland state agencies are scrambling like eggs after auditors revealed they're spending nearly $3.5 billion without any way to back up funding.
Tonight, we're following renewed concerns over how your elected leaders keep track of your tax dollars at both the city and state level.
Spotlight on Maryland is investigating who oversees money given to nonprofits in Baltimore, and we're also looking into how state agencies allocated nearly $3.5 billion without ensuring the money was actually going to come through.
When you start wasting federal dollars, it gives the Trump administration the perfect excuse to say, we'll send you less of them the next time.
In a year-end review of 8 different state agencies, auditors with Maryland's Office of Legislative Audits found billions of federal funds which has not properly been recorded. In some cases, agencies were spending federal funds before they even ever arrived in the bank account. At Maryland's Department of Health, $425 million in unsupported funds. The Department of Human Services, $1.3 billion. The Department of Education, $176 million. State Highway Administration, $660 million. Maryland Transit Administration, $755 million. The Department of Emergency Management, $86 million. Labor Department, $63 million.
There's potential here for extreme risk to the Maryland taxpayer of never seeing any of these funds.
In all, auditors uncovered $3.42 billion, mostly of federal funds, which cannot be supported by state documents. Auditors wrote, to the extent these unsupported revenue entries are uncollectible, they may represent deficit balances that require state general funds or other state funds to resolve. Translation, Maryland taxpayers might be on the hook for billions in phantom federal funding that was never actually coming in.
A new state audit claims several Maryland agencies exempt from the state's typical financial guidelines aren't putting their own safeguards in place to keep track of spending.
But wait, there's more. Another audit found 42 different offices in state government spending a total of $8.5 billion last year with little or no oversight. These offices are exempt from complying with state procurement laws, and while they're supposed to adopt their own policies, auditors found the State Lottery and Gaming Control Agency, the Maryland Core Program, the Maryland State Archives, and the Maryland Energy Administration had no procurement policy on paper. Let me be honest with you about something for a moment. The real money maker isn't starting your own business, rising to high ranks at your company, or even landing a high-paying sales job. You want to hop on the GRIFT train? Open up a nonprofit that provides daycare services. Open up a nonprofit that pretends to help the youth with crime. You make millions of dollars, just like these people do in blue-led city states.
It can be really demoralizing for staff to see a leader's compensation soar while their own compensation remains stagnant.
Look at the pattern. Guaranteed taxpayer funding, 6-figure executive salaries, zero accountability. The problems never ever get solved because if you actually solve the problem, the money would stop flowing. The incentive structure is completely backwards here. And here's the beautiful part about this grift. More than 50% of the BCYF staff is based in Maryland, but they don't say exactly how many employees work out of state. So you're paying Maryland taxes to fund salaries for people who might not even live in Maryland.
Well, Maryland is facing yet another projected budget deficit next year, largely due to increases in public education spending.
All while this is happening, Maryland is facing another projected $1.4 billion budget deficit next year. They passed $1.6 billion in new taxes and fees in 2025, but apparently, obviously, it wasn't enough, because when you have billions and billions of dollars unaccounted for in spending and nonprofit executives making $219,000 a year, while the problem gets worse, absolutely no amount of money in tax increases will ever be enough. Now let's talk about Baltimore's mayor, Brandon Scott. You want to know how to become a mayor in a blue city? You don't even need experience. Focus on DEI hiring and just smile for the camera. It worked for Brandon Mohawk Johnson. It worked for Brandon Scott. And obviously it worked for Zoran Mamdani. Scott has been crystal clear about his priorities, but accountability for taxpayer dollars doesn't seem to be one of them. When asked about MAOS is missing $2 million in documentation, his team couldn't obviously provide an answer. When BCYF's executive compensation raised red flags, his administration obviously stayed silent.
We must also address the serious budget challenges we face with honesty and discipline.
Governor Wes Moore says they need to address budget challenges with honesty and discipline. But how can you have honesty when city officers can't produce basic spending documentation? How can you have discipline when nonprofit executives are getting 27% raises while the city faces massive deficits? The Baltimore City Inspector General is expected to release a second report on BCYF in the new year. The second report found a lack of oversight from city officials over particular funding. Meanwhile, the Baltimore City Council proposed a new bill that would update regulations of that fund, including increased financial reporting from the grantees. This is the exact same playbook we're seeing in Minnesota. We're seeing it in California. We're seeing it in every Democrat-run jurisdiction. Create nonprofits with guaranteed taxpayer funding, pay executives six-figure salaries, eliminate oversight, and when auditors start asking questions, claim you're working on reforms. Worst case scenario, blame Trump. Miraculously, state agencies have no idea where the money's going. Sounds pretty familiar, doesn't it? They're taking a play out of Gavin Newsom's playbook. California has perfected the art of losing track of billions and billions of dollars of taxpayer money while homelessness gets worse, crime increases, and problems multiply.
When you start wasting federal dollars, it gives the Trump administration the perfect excuse to say, we'll send you less of them the next time.
And he's absolutely right. Why should federal taxpayers send billions to Maryland when state agencies can't even document their money properly? Why should Baltimore residents pay taxes to fund nonprofits where executives make $219,000 a year while the city can't produce line-by-line budget breakdowns? The lack of oversight, the lack of accountability, phantom budgets, the six-figure nonprofit salaries, and Baltimore is running it exactly like California, exactly like Minnesota, exactly like every other blue jurisdiction where taxpayer money disappears into black hole programs of incentives and never solving the freaking problem. An outside accounting firm has now been called in to examine accounting practices at state agencies. But here's the question that nobody's asking. How did this get so bad in the first place? How do you spend $3.42 billion without documentation? How do you run a $2 million city office without tracking expenses? How do you give nonprofit executives a 27% raise while the city faces massive budget deficits? America, Minnesota opened up Pandora's box and Baltimore is about to get burned about what comes out. When nonprofit executives are making six-figure salaries with guaranteed tax funding while state agencies can't account for billions of dollars, you're not looking at incompetence. You're looking at a system designed to enrich insiders while the problems actually never get solved. Brandon Scott can't explain where $2 million went, but I guarantee he can tell you about his DEI initiatives are doing great. The Trump administration is watching, federal auditors are circling, and Baltimore's grift economy is about to face the same scrutiny that's tearing through Minnesota. The only question is, how many more more six-figure nonprofit executives are going to get exposed before the house of cards collapse. Let me know what you think about this. Drop it down in the comment section down below. Smash the like button if you kindly would. Share, subscribe, and as always, guys, I'll catch you on the next one.